Every year I know we gonna go hard. We been that team ever since Bart started. All my cheese heads go pack go. Ain't show with no mercy, cutting no slack, no. I ain't a bad sport and I'll even wish you good luck. Only thing I will.
Good morning and welcome to Lombardi's Legends podcast. I am Wags and joining me as always is Dane, and we are recording live here on a Saturday morning. So if you're joining us on Facebook or YouTube, we appreciate you and say hello. Jump in the respective live chat. We'll mix it up here as we get into a big playoff weekend. But Dane, how you doing, man? Packers back in the playoffs as a 7 seed, and we're going to get into this. Headed to Philadelphia to play the Eagles, and this will be a rematch of Week 1. We've come full circle, but two different teams, but I think a lot of similar things as we get into it. But how are you feeling just overall as the Packers embark on hopefully another deep playoff run?
I feel great. I'm not gonna lie. I feel really, really good. We're in the playoffs. We'll talk in a minute about some of the other nonsense over the last couple of weeks, but the reality is the Packers are in the playoff. They clinched playoff spot a few weeks back. The whole point of being, in August is we want to go to the playoffs, right? And then let's let the chips fall where they fall from there. And I'll tell you what, I did not predict that both the Lions and Vikings would also be in the playoffs, having a ridiculous seasons respectively, both really talented teams. If you would have told me the Packers would only win one division game and still have the record they have, I'd say, I'll have what you're having, because that's not possible, but it was somehow. But the reality is this: we knew we were going to be going on the road, no matter what. And we're going on the road, and it's going to be, road game after road game after road game on the way to the Super Bowl. But we're in the tournament right now. The new season starts now. The Eagles are a different team. The Packers are a different team. I'm excited for Sunday afternoon Packer playoff football. Let's have some fun. Let's enjoy the moment. And I'm optimistic, actually, about this game coming up on Sunday, Wags.
I was just going to ask you about that, because I think the general feeling, and maybe this is a minority and not the majority of the fan base, but I mean, it's hard not to read into the Packers' performance the last few weeks and wonder, did they peak a little bit early in late November, early December, playing some of their best football, and in the last couple of weeks just haven't looked very crisp, to say the least. And I know last week it wasn't really a game that they were probably going full throttle. We had some guys that rested for a good chunk of the game, but even so, we're coming into the playoffs as a 7 seed, same as we did last year, going on the road, underdogs, against an opponent that has some explosive offensive weapons. So there's a lot of parallels to what we saw last year, but I don't know if there's quite the same sense of quiet optimism amongst Packer fans. You are optimistic, Dane, but just for those out there that aren't, what can you say to them to give them a little bit more confidence that this is a reset button, and the Packer team we saw playing really, really good football for the better part of a month in that stretch could show up and perform at a high level here on Sunday?
Yeah, I'll start with our offensive line. I've said it all year. I think that this offensive line can contend with anybody in the league week in and week out. I think, Wags, that the consistency of the offensive line, probably the worst game they had of the year was against the Vikings a couple weeks ago. But having those 5 up front with Josh Jacobs moving the pile, I think if we are able to control the clock with this team, we have a chance in any game. So I'll start there, Wags, with that. I'll also say defensively, I mean, would the Packer fans be more excited if we would have won against the Bears? Would we feel better if that would have happened, if there wasn't a massive blunder at the end of the game? Maybe, maybe not. But I really like the defense. I think that the pass rush is showing that different guys can step up at different moments. I think that that's still all out there in front of us. Defensively, I think we've got some of our DBs are playing really good football. Getting Evan Williams back is going to be critical, I think, to this defense. He's somebody that makes this defense hum just a little bit better. We're going to be able to get some different guys in positions we want to get them in, namely Bullard, I think, getting back in the slot. I think Zane Anderson's probably going to be back as well. So just the depth of the DBs in the back end is going to make this defense, I think, play a little bit faster, and the miscommunications are going to be a little bit more limited. And finally, Wags, probably the biggest Achilles heel, even last year, was being able to stop the run. And this year, the stopping the run has been something that the Packers defense has been much better at. So I think this is a faster defense that's built for playoff football. I think offensively, we can control the clock running the ball. And Wags, if we can see Jordan Love settle in and have some good throws and make some big plays, this is a team that I don't think people want to play against. So yeah, I get it that Packer fans are frustrated. The last 2 weeks didn't go the way we wanted to, but I'll tell you what, I think if the Packers beat the Eagles, all of a sudden a lot of those fans are going to go do a 180 and go completely the other direction. Any given Sunday, anything can happen, but I like some of the anchor of this team right now. I think that they do some things really, really well. They do some things that they could do better on, but holistically, I really like some of the core values of this team, and I think that they're built for going on the road and playing good football when it matters most.
Dane, I think one thing, and this is probably a little bit simplistic, and I don't think is something that would prevent this team from overcoming this narrative, but they seem to play much, much better with a lead. And in the games that we've lost, they've gotten off to a slow start, and they've been chasing and they've been behind, and they haven't been able to come all the way back. And this goes back to the beginning of the season, that very first game against Philadelphia. It was back and forth in the second and third quarter, but for the most part, the Eagles were controlling things and playing from ahead in terms of that back and forth. Saquon Barkley was able to get going a little bit, and I think especially in the third quarter, and Packers just weren't able to do enough to overcome that. That first game against Minnesota, they fell way behind, obviously, in the first half. Heroic fight. It never really, I think, in anyone's opinion, had a chance to win that game. Tactically, it became a close game at the end. But again, get yourself in a hole offensively. Weren't able to get off to a good start. First game against Detroit, same thing. Second game against Detroit, same thing. When we started that stretch, I'm going to go back to the San Francisco game. The offense was able to put points up on the board in the first quarter, get themselves a lead. That continued the next week against the Dolphins. And then after the Detroit loss, where they got off to a slower start in the second matchup, again, were able to come back, but just not quite enough. Same thing in the following week against the Seahawks. So that stretch where it felt like the Packers were really putting things together, aside from one game against the superior, at this point anyway, on paper, team in Detroit, they were able to get off to a good start in the first quarter and get themselves a little bit of a lead. I think Philadelphia is good enough that even if the Packers get off to that fast start, there may still be some of that back and forth. But I think they dictate some of the things of the terms of this game, and how this game plays out is in the Packers' favor if they're the ones that can get off to a strong start offensively. I think Philadelphia, with their defense and with their ability to run the football, is just not a team that you can really have a really good chance to try to play from behind. So it's going to be critical. And I think Coach LaFleur realizes that this team, they've been trying to receive a lot when they win the toss. And it hasn't always translated. Case in point, the last matchup against Minnesota, they received the opening kickoff, but they were able to get a field goal in the first quarter, but pretty quickly found themselves in a hole in the first half. This offense cannot get off to a slow start in this game and expect to put themselves in a really good chance to win. Can they come back? I think they can, but that's not the type of game flow that's putting themselves in position for success.
That's really good analysis, Wags. And I mean, kind of looking, I think that goes right into the injury report, at least for the Eagles. I think that the biggest news for them certainly would be their quarterback, right? Getting Jalen Hurts back is just massive for them. Coming back from this concussion situation that he's had, but the reason I think it really ties in to the fast start for the Packers, and our good buddy Schmitty shared this with us too yesterday when we were kind of texting in a Packer group chat, is that Hurts has thrown the ball like 4 times in the last month. Because of this injury issue. So he's coming back. Does he have some rust? Yes, he uses his legs a lot, but Wags, to your point, getting off to a fast start, can the Packers take advantage of maybe a little bit of rust from the Eagles star quarterback? And can they maybe jump out to an early lead based on that? Maybe force some mistakes from Jalen Hurts early on. It remains to be seen, but I think it's important to at least highlight at the top of this podcast that, dude hasn't played really in a month. That's a pretty big obstacle to, at least in that first quarter, he could be a little bit off his mark to at least begin the game. I'm not relying on that, but I think it's something that we have to be mindful of.
Yeah, and that could be a similarity to week 1. Hurts did not look all that crisp, and neither did Jordan Love, for that matter. I thought the Packers did a really good job of bottling him up as a runner in that week 1 matchup. So if they're able to replicate that, that would be a significant thing for this defense to be able to accomplish. But they also intercepted Jalen Hurts twice in that week 1 matchup, and unfortunately didn't immediately translate to getting ahead, but they were able to turn, I believe, one of those interceptions in the second quarter into points. So when you get those opportunities, especially on the road, you have to take advantage of them. It was looking at the injuries. Jordan Love, I don't know how much was gamemanship. It didn't seem like he was ever in danger of seriously missing this game. But at the same time, how will he look? Jordan at times has looked really comfortable and seemed to be getting a rhythm during that second half of the season. But towards the end here, he struggled a little bit with his accuracy again, which we saw early in the season. And that also will not be a recipe for success if the Packers are going to make a run, not just with starting this week against Philadelphia, but into the playoffs. They're going to need Jordan Love to get back to playing his best football, and dare I say, even take it up a level and play his very best football of this season in order to have an opportunity to survive and advance.
Wags, let's talk injury report for this Packers team. What do you say? And then folks will do some breaking down offensive, defensive. I mean, it's a long injury report for both of these teams, but I think largely it's a really, really it's promising, right? I mean, we're getting a lot of guys that looks like they're going to be back. Quay Walker, questionable. Evan Williams, questionable. But Brenton Cox, questionable. But I got to think, and tell me what you think. I mean, we're not the doctors here. We're not seeing them every week, but I have a sense that these guys are playing. Evan Williams said he's planning on coming back and playing like his hair on fire self, was his quote this week. He's playing. Right. Yeah. So, I mean, that's a huge deal. And I think getting he and Quay Walker, who was playing the best football, I think, of his entire Packer career over the last few weeks prior to this injury, getting him next to Edgerrin Cooper finally and getting these guys out there could be a massive, sneaky key to success for this Packers defense.
It is. And I'll tell you what, he's talking about Jalen Hurts as a runner, but then also Saquon Barkley and what a weapon he has been this season. Always has been a supremely talented running back, but just unleashed, obviously, in his first full season with Philadelphia. And that causes a lot of problems when you're talking about that second level, because Saquon, once he gets a seam, he's got the burst. He's going to, if he can get through that second level, that's when you start getting gashed a little bit in the rush defense. So it's going to be incumbent that if Quay's able to go, that he has that side to side mobility to complement Edgar Cooper. And I'll tell you what, if he's close to 100%, and I do expect to see him out there, that could be a significant factor in how this defense is able to perform and hopefully at least limit or slow down this Philadelphia offense. Saquon, what they want to do again is, he can really cause mismatches in a variety of ways, not just as a runner, but as a catcher of the football. In that week 1 matchup, he ran a wheel route, and Packers had, I believe, McDuffie matched up against him. And it was just, first of all, really well executed by the Eagles. Good throw. But I don't know that Quay Walker or Edgar Cooper is able to break up that pass. But I think, as much as I like McDuffie, I think they have a better chance just from an athletic and mobility standpoint and their overall length and speed of being able to cover a play like that, and potentially take that out of the Eagles playbook, versus if Quay's not 100%, then, it's something that opposing offenses can try to exploit with the talent like the Eagles have. So it's going to be pretty significant. And then on the back end, Evan Williams, I fully agree with you, Dane. Like, we've been able to patch some things together, but we saw it against, the Vikings, particularly a couple of weeks ago. It's just tough to be able to match up when you've got some really talented receivers on the opposite side of football. And the Eagles have a duo that maybe not quite to the level of Justin Jefferson, but AJ Brown looks like he's good to go. Devonta Smith is battling a little bit of a back injury, but looks like he should be good to go. Those guys are very, very talented. And so having all of your, preferred starters on the back end can make a big difference. The defense has looked at its best with Evan Williams out there on the football field this year.
Yeah, and it's one sneaky he's questionable this week, but for the Packers is TJ Slayton, somebody that doesn't necessarily, get all the stats, but that's not his role. He is a run stuffer, and Wags, he's really blossomed, I think, this year. And he's a huge part of why this Packers defense up the middle has been so strong against the run. He's eating up double teams like it's nothing this year. So TJ Slayton, questionable. He's had an ankle, but he was a limited participant this week. Have to highlight that, because without him, it gets thin quick as far as run stoppers go on this defensive line. So that's another big one as the Packers look to try to limit Saquon Barkley in this Eagles offense.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dane, let's shift back to the Packers on the offensive side of the ball. We knew Christian Watson, unfortunately, significant injury, suffered last week. He didn't have a huge game statistically against the Eagles back in week 1, but let's talk about that. What's the overall impact of no Christian Watson here, at least when it pertains to this week's matchup?
I mean, it's a damn shame, right? So thinking about Christian, first of all, it's terrible, the knee injury news. I think offensively, from a Packers standpoint, he takes the top off the defense sometimes. He's kind of that burner. He's the guy that can make those explosive big plays. We've seen some of the stats that, the offense, the pass play, yards per pass, a lot of that stuff starts to go down when Watson's not on the field for the Packers. You know what? I think this is a Packers team that, even if Watson were to play, I think they're going to be looking to run the ball and really dictate the rules by their standard and really try to out-tough this Eagles team. It sounds crazy maybe, but I think that's what this Packers offense is looking to accomplish this week. That being said, I mean, this is where somebody else is going to have to step up, right? And I think Bo Melton is probably the most logical as far as a speed receiver, somebody that's going to be out there. So I would expect to see Bo getting a little bit more run this week, if nothing else, is somebody that can kind of streak down the field and just try to stretch this defense a little bit. I bet that he gets a look at some point in that game. But even if he doesn't, they're looking to do that. And I think Wags with Christian Watson out, I wouldn't be surprised if the Packers involve the tight ends a little bit more. Luke Musgrave has slowly been ramping up here over the last couple of weeks, had a catch last week again, starting to make, a little bit of hay. Obviously, Tucker Kraft has been tremendous all year, but Wags, I almost have to think going into this week against a really, really good Eagles defense, the Packers play a little bit more 12 personnel with both Musgrave and Kraft out there at the same time, and really try to beat the Eagles, stress the Eagles defense kind of in the center of the field as much as they possibly can down Christian Watson. And the Eagles, as good as they've been, that might be a tougher task than I think the casual fan might realize, getting both Musgrave and Tucker Kraft out there at the same time. Some safer throws for Jordan Love. Obviously, you're going to have Wicks, you're going to have Romeo Doubs, you're going to have, obviously Jaden Reed, right? You're going to have your assortment, but maybe the Packers are able to find something there with those two twin tight ends and Josh Jacobs, and we can come up with some pretty good possession plays through the offense that way as well.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned the tight ends, because I was actually going to ask, is in a non-traditional sense, Luke Musgrave came back from injury now a few weeks ago, and could he be a sneaky stretch the field guy in a different way, obviously, than Christian Watson would be? It doesn't really have anything on tape for the Eagles to be concerned about, but we know what he can do when he's more healthy and when he's a bigger part of this offense. So hopefully now with getting his legs under him and some additional time, if there's some opportunities to scheme up some looks there, Eagles are very good up the middle. I mean, two really good safeties and CJ Gardner-Johnson, Reed Blankenship. Obviously, a lot of Packer / Wisconsin Badger fans are very familiar with Zach Bond as a linebacker, just tackle machine. Nakobe Dean has been a really good linebacker for them as well. So, and then certainly on the defensive front with Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter. Up the middle, the Eagles arguably are one of, if not the best defenses in the league. So I think it's going to be incumbent, as you said, on the Packers to find some of those seams in the run game. I don't think this is a matchup where running straight up the middle is going to be super effective, but we're going to have to find some of those opportunities in the run game. Certainly, that's a given. But then I think some of the edges, of the perimeter of the defense is really where we can potentially find some areas to attack. So if Musgrave and Kraft can settle into some of those zones or some of those seams, I like that call out, Dane, and I think that's where the Packers need to try to find some of their advantages this week as well.
Yeah, spot on. I mean, and it's gonna be a fun matchup because this is kind of like two powerhouses. I would say that this Packers offensive line has played really well together this year against a really strong front seven from Philadelphia. I mean, this is just one of those weeks where our guys are going to have to be better than their guys, right? And I don't want to simplify it because there's so much more that's going to go into this game. But I think it really does start up front there. And Josh Jacobs has been tremendous. This is a week where he can just put a stamp on a playoff game with Green Bay. And I'm excited to see it because I think he's more than capable of doing that.
Yeah, and he came out in kind of a slow start in that week one matchup as well. So that's clearly the engine that gets this offense going. Dane, I do want to ask you a question. Jaden Reed had a really hot start to the year. Yeah. Huge game in week one against this Eagles team. Just got chunk yarded. Not a ton of receptions, but it just 140 yards receiving and a touchdown in this previous matchup. Is that something that it seems like he didn't get as many targets at stretches of the second half of the season, which I don't really know why I put my finger on it, but how can we get him kind of being that engine as a receiver, especially with Christian Watson out? We talk about tight ends. Obviously, Bo Melton's kind of your speed guy, but to me, we need to get Jaden Reed more involved in this game. And then certainly Romeo Doubs and Dontavian Wicks, if they can secure that football this week and take care of business and the targets that they get, I'll feel a lot better about this pass offense. But does it start with Jaden Reed, or what are some things that we can do to get him going?
I mean, it's a good question. I'm going to ask you the same thing, so I'm going to put it back on you in a second. But I mean, I think it starts with early and often to getting Jaden Reed that football. And I'm not saying necessarily stretching the field, but trying to get him isolated one-on-one matchups. And I think that's what Philly's going to try to do is beat the Packers in some man-to-man. Can we get Jaden Reed isolated in the slot? And maybe make some plays early on. And Wags, I'm looking for some short passes, have him beat a man, right? So trying to get him out there, maybe some kind of manufactured design screens early on as well, and just doing what we can to get him out in the flat with the ball in his hands and try to make a play. But I think it's really going to be important early on, maybe in those first 15, 20 plays in the game script for LaFleur, when Jordan's throwing the ball, an early throw should definitely be going Jaden Reed's way. And again, it's one of those where, I mean, get it in his hands and see if he can make a play, with the ball in his hands early on, set up some blocks and get him out in some open space. But I think that's the key. I'm curious your read on this as well, and no pun intended on your read as well on this, but it has fallen off a little bit. And I wonder how much of this is game flow, how much is this is, the play calling or what this is. But this is a week where I think Jaden Reed could definitely pop back up and probably be the guy that largely picks up some of those other Christian Watson plays. I think he has the capability of doing that. So what are we looking at for Jaden Reed this week? How can the Packers get him involved?
Well, he seems to be most effective on crossing routes because he's sneaky fast and he's just a really strong route runner. So even if we don't have a run game that's just churning out yards right off the bat, getting some play action and getting tight ends involved in the flat, like I said, and then if you're running to the right and Jaden Reed's lined up in that direction, instead of sending him in motion pre-snap, you can do play action and let him run a crossing route on a counter. And that's where he seems to do the most damage because the defense has to stop and try to recover. And he's very effective at securing the football on the run and getting the yards after catch and those types of plays. That's kind of similar. If you go back to, some of the stretch run of the Rams a few years ago when they were arguably the best team in the NFC and making their deep playoff and Super Bowl runs. The year that they had Odell Beckham, he was kind of in that role. I'm just trying to think. I'm blanking, but he's been all over the league. But they had more of that X receiver play, and that's kind of the playbook that LaFleur comes from, obviously, in the Shanahan McVay offense. And Reed's been really effective in that X receiver role and getting him in those crossing routes and into some space where the defense is trying to track and recover. I think they rely a little bit too much with Jaden sometimes on some of the end arounds to try to get him the ball. And I feel like that's been snuffed out pretty well on tape. I don't think that's as effective anymore as it was last year, I guess is the way I would look at it. So I'd like to see them, I'm not saying they shouldn't send him in motion pre-snap, because the pre-snap motion is clearly a big part of this offense. But I think they need to mix up some of those looks and rely on getting him involved more as a pass catcher and getting the rhythm on that second level, more so than behind the line of scrimmage as either a receiver or a runner. You don't need to eliminate that altogether. It just seems like that's the default. This is how we're getting Jaden Reed involved in the game playbook. And so it'll be interesting to see what they do and what they dust off from that week 1 matchup as well.
Wags,
go ahead.
Philly D in our YouTube chat is talking about this Eagles defense, and he's saying that mobile quarterbacks they've had some issues with. If Love sees a lane, he needs to take off. What are your expectations for Jordan this week? Wags, like you've said, he's been up and down a little bit. How can the Packers make sure that he's comfortable? I think it probably starts up front with the offensive line, but what are we expecting from Jordan this week?
It's a great question. And first of all, thank you, Philly D. I'm assuming you're a Philly fan for being able to pop in and say hi. Looking forward to this matchup. Obviously, this week, a lot of respect for the Eagles. Jordan, well, he's not really much of a runner, as we know, but if he has opportunities, he's taking them. I think he needs to protect himself, and it seems like this is a very physical Eagles defense, and I don't think they're going to mind seeing Jordan tucking and running with the football too often, unless obviously he's able to pick up a key first down and leverage a big third down situation. But he needs to be accurate with the football, make smart decisions, and I think we'll know pretty early in this game if we're getting a good Jordan Love or one that's been a little bit off in his accuracy and his rhythm. It usually shows up right away. So I don't know, Dane. I think it's hard to say because he was playing really, really good football, but it was while giving Josh Jacobs the majority of the carries. He was getting a ton of work, and it was almost like Jordan Love, if his attempts were in around 25 pass attempts in a game, if you go back and look at that stretch where the Packers were playing some of their best offensive football. So it wasn't incumbent on Jordan Love to have to come out slinging in order to have an effective and efficient performance. But I almost wonder, Dane, to this point, if they do need to be a little bit more aggressive in the pass game. As much as we say Josh Jacobs is the engine that runs this offense, is that going to set up Jordan Love for being in the best rhythm and playing his most comfortable and really putting a defense off its point early in the game? I don't know that it is. I think you need to be aggressive with Jordan Love in this pass game early, and then maybe it's Josh Jacobs a little bit more once this offense finds its footing. So as I talk through that, that's kind of my thought process, but I don't know if you agree with that or if you have kind of a different answer to how we can get an effective and in rhythm Jordan Love in this matchup.
I mean, I look at last year. I mean, I think some Packer fans, certainly not us, and I don't think many of our listeners, to be honest, I think they're pretty dialed in, but we forget that this is a team and Jordan Love that went on the road last year in Dallas, and Dallas was playing really good ball. Packers went into a hostile environment, and Jordan just slung the ball around. And I think that you're hitting on a really good point that, yeah, we're not going to forget about Jacobs, but I would not be surprised because there is past precedence. LaFleur comes out and just says, Jordan, this is your game. Start throwing the ball, So we'll see. I don't, that doesn't mean we're talking 30-yard chucks down the field, right? But I think that maybe getting him into some 3-step drops, getting him into some rhythm early on and looking to make some plays and settle him in could definitely be on the table. Philly is a really difficult environment to play in. Dallas is a difficult environment to play in, but Philly, afternoon game in Philly, the sun going down, look out, right? I mean, these fans are going to be unruly. But that being said, all the more reason maybe that early on in this game, it's getting Jordan settled in and frankly, getting some of these young receivers settled in as well, making sure that, they know, hey, this is a game that we're going to be leaning on you guys a little bit. So, maybe this is a week where Jordan's throwing the ball. And I think that might be an expectation that LaFleur is setting for this week.
Yeah, and I mean, in that first matchup, again, I mentioned earlier, Jacobs didn't really get going in the first half. Again, a pretty stout defensive line and certainly up the middle with this Eagles defense. So maybe it's a big zag and Packers do come out more aggressively throwing the football. Now that can hurt you too. If Jordan isn't accurate when you come out aggressively throwing the football, all of a sudden that's a situation where you could be 3 and out in their first offensive possession. So you have to be careful, but certainly if they've got a good game plan to maybe have some high, leverage throws early, that are pretty likely to be completed, and you're looking for just some short yardage passes to get some completions under the belt, and then get a first down, move the chains, and then maybe start slinging a little bit more. I'm not saying the Eagles won't be ready for Jordan Love in this past offense, but that game script might be a little bit of a zag for what the Packers have been doing. And maybe that's what they need to do to get off to a little bit of a faster start in their first couple of possessions.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about this Eagles offense and this Packers defense. I mean, I think it starts with Barkley. Barkley's had a historic year, 2,000 yards. He can beat you in the run game. He can beat you in the pass game. We talked about a little bit up front, right? Getting Quay very likely back next to Cooper, I think is a huge boon for this Packers defense that I don't think enough folks realize how important that could be, especially against an Eagles team with such a dynamic running back. But Wags, how do the Packers try to minimize Saquon Barkley? And is that really, do you think, the game script here? Because they have so many weapons on this offense. So what do you try to take away, and what do you live with as a Packers defense going into this week matchup in Philly?
I think it has to actually, you're right. Saquon is paramount to the success of that team. But I still think you need to start with trying to worry about Jalen Hurts. And I know he's coming off an injury, but if you can kind of keep Jalen Hurts from just killing you, then that in a way can start to take Saquon Barkley, I'm not saying out of the offensive game plan, but the fact of the matter is, if Saquon Barkley is getting a rhythm and he gets going and they could keep going back to him, it probably means Philadelphia is playing either with a lead or they're comfortable with the offensive script and can sort of where the game's going. And so, yeah, you do need to key on and try to slow down Saquon Barkley early. You can't get gashed by that right off the bat. But I really still think if it's Jalen Hurts is a little bit off of his rhythm, then it takes a key component away from what Saquon Barkley is able to do, because now, you're probably taking the short yardage situation out of the equation. If Barkley picks up, 5 yards on either first or second down, but Jalen misses on a throw on one of those downs, now you're forcing him, even if it's 3rd and 5, that's really a passing down. But you're also taking kind of Jalen's short yardage quarterback, the Phillies, the Philly special out of the equation. So if the Packers can take advantage of disrupting some of Jalen Hurts' game, if he is a little bit rusty early, and even potentially turn him over, I think that gives a much better opportunity for the offense to hopefully turn that into playing ahead. And I don't think this is a game that Packers are likely to go in and get a big lead against the Eagles on and maintain that the whole game. Like, we saw it last year against the Cowboys. I just don't see that this year. I think they can go in and get a win if they play a really good game? Sure. But so you're not going to take Saquon out of it entirely. I think he's just going to get his, Dane. And for me, that's why I'm really focusing on Jalen Hurts as the guy that you want to slow down and take his running away, and then kind of take it from there. But I don't know. What is your answer to Saquon Barkley? Because to me, I think it's going to be tough to prevent him from, getting his, 90 to 110 yards rushing and 20 to 25 touches.
I'll live with 90 yards. I'll tell you that much. I'll live from him. I'd be, I'll take that. But yeah, it is Hurts. I think it's Hurts. It's the explosive plays from the offense for them. And can the Packers get off the field on 3rd down? That's the big question mark. Can the Packers, get off the field on 3rd and 4th down? There's been a penchant from some teams this year that they get the Packers defense in 4th and short, and they go get it. And, can the Packers make teams pay, namely the Philadelphia Eagles pay when they get into these short down and distances and make them rethink going for it every time they have a chance against this Packers defense. So I think that that's going to be key. And I just think that pressure up front is just absolutely paramount this week against Jalen Hurts, not only from the edges, but really up the middle. Against a scrambling quarterback, the best way to impact that quarterback is to bring some kind of pressure up the middle. If you get it from one side or the other, we've seen it. We saw it against Caleb Williams last week. They can kind of flush out and get out of the way a little bit sometimes, especially if they're athletic. Jalen Hurts, if you can get some pressure up the middle from, Carl Brooks or Colby Wooden or Quay Walker's been really good coming in up the middle. And that's something we haven't done. I think that that's a huge key this week is Halfley giving Quay Walker the ability to go and bring some pressure up the middle. Because that's really sometimes at his best rushing the passer is when they just let him pin his ears back and go after that quarterback.
Yeah. And I was going to say that because in that first matchup, they played more of a contained pass rush, and you kind of have to against Jalen Hurts. The downside to that is it does make it a little bit harder to get some pressure on the edge. The upside is you're giving yourself a better opportunity to contain Hurts as a runner because he's elusive, and if he can make you miss in the pass rush, then all of a sudden he's got open field to work with. That's where Edgar Cooper and Quay Walker are being at health are so critical, not only in that rush defense, but in those passing situations and being able to contain Jalen Hurts. And I think you said it. You took the words right out of my mouth. Quay Walker. What I would like to see them do is not just try to sit back and settle and try to read off of Hurts, but Quay Walker is not the most effective as a pass defender anyway. So if you're in a situation where he's got the football and he's holding on to it, I'd like Quay Walker, instead of sitting back as much, to just shoot the gap. And yeah, you still need to play, the gaps and not over pursue. But I think that would get Jalen Hurts a little bit off of his spot. And you may as well be aggressive and go and try to tackle him, even if it's not a sack. Maybe you're bringing him down, around the line of scrimmage or a yard or two past it. You'll take that any time when it's a pass situation and Jalen Hurts is tucking in and trying to hurt you with his legs. So I think that's a perfect call out, Dane, and exactly kind of what I was thinking with trying to contain Jalen and his running ability. It's easier said than done though, as we know. So
there's no doubt about that.
Yeah. All right, Dane, I think we should at this point, let's get into our X Factor score predictions.
Perfect.
I'm going to let you kick this off. Staying with the defense of the Packers, who do you have as an X Factor this week?
So Wags, I don't know what it is exactly. I've got this premonition in my brain. I can almost feel it. I see Carrington Valentine stepping in front of a ball and taking it to the house. Ooh, I don't know what it is. I don't know why, but
what you're predicting.
I feel it. I feel it. I feel it inside me. Carrington Valentine, I truly believe he's cornerback one. We've said it on our social media this season. He's really stepping up this second half and playing great ball. The coaches are trusting in him. I feel it. Carrington Valentine is my defensive X factor. He's going to get a pick six. I'm calling it right now.
Wow. Dane, I'm almost speechless. Coming right out and predicting a pick six. Over the years, going way back, many, many years as Packer fans, we've had some, pretty noteworthy, interception pick sixes in the playoffs from some guys. And those names kind of live on in the hallowed grounds of Lambeau. I realize this is a Philadelphia game, but could that be kind of something that kicks off a playoff run? I think that would be a positive omen if that comes to fruition for sure. So, Dane, I love this prediction. I've learned not to, to overreact, but certainly not to squelch any premonitions that either of us might have. So
True.
excited, very excited by that. I was planning on you saying either Evan Williams or Quay Walker and going with the other guy, whoever you didn't pick. So now I've got two, but I'm going to go with Evan Williams. I think Evan Williams, I've got him as an X factor, and here's why. We saw, again, mentioned earlier, a couple weeks ago, Jordan Addison really just killed this Packer defense. And I think it's certainly Evan Williams isn't the primary guy lined up against a Devonta Smith or AJ Brown, but I think on the back end, he just makes such a difference. He comes in, he can help support the run game. I think this defense is just at another level when Evan Williams is healthy and out there on the football field. Javon Bullard is a lot more comfortable playing close to the line of scrimmage in that slot position. And certainly, as you mentioned, our corners can kind of just settle in on the boundaries between Keyshawn Nixon. And I agree. Carrington Valentine has quietly, I think, been playing some really good football here in the second half of the season. So excited to see what a difference Evan Williams might be able to make. I'm gonna counter and add to your prediction that the Packers get 2 or more interceptions again this week on Jalen Hurts, and Evan Williams is the other guy. I'm going to put my name on it that comes away with an interception in this game too. Not going to predict a pick 6. I'll let you live on that one, but I think if the Packers are going to win this game, they're going to have to force multiple turnovers from this Philadelphia offense.
Tremendous. Offensively, who you got, Wags?
It's Jaden Reed. Jaden Reed is my X factor. I'm dusting off the Jaden Reed X factor. He was my X factor a lot last season. Started off this season with a bang against the Eagles in Brazil. And he was at a level early this season that I got away from it. I was like, he's too good. I can't call him an X factor, but I'm bringing it back for the playoffs. I got a little flack for drafting him in our fantasy, draft for this weekend, but you had a premonition about Carrington Valentine. I've had a premonition all week about Jaden Reed. I've got a really good feeling that he's going to have a big game this week. And I think that is the hidden key that could unlock Jordan Love and this pass offense to take it up to another level for this playoff run. And hopefully a big performance results in a Packer win on the road. But I'm going to go with Jaden Reed as my offensive X factor. But Dane, who do you have?
I'm going Jordan Love. Point blank. Go ball. That we don't normally do the quarterback, right? But this is a week. Can Jordan just get hot? This team can go as far as Jordan takes him. I really believe that. Can he be on? Can he put this team on his shoulders against one of the best defenses in football? It's Jordan Love. And that goes back to, is he tucking the ball and running it sometimes? Is he making plays out of nowhere? Is he just making the smart decision sometimes and throwing the ball away, right? There's a lot that goes into that quarterback position and just the mental aspects of it. Jordan Love is my X factor this week, and Jordan Love's can be my X factor as long as his playoffs go on the offensive side of the ball. And I love him, and we support him. Huge opportunity for Jordan Love to go win some ball games here.
I love it. All right. Score predictions. Dane, we never pick against the Packers. I don't think either of us are going to start this week. Nope. And unabashed homers here on Lombardi's Legends, but magic number for me is 30. I think if the Packers can get to 30 points, they've got a shot. I think this defense does need to get interceptions, get some turnovers. If they're able to do that, I think they can keep this Eagles offense under 30, but I don't know that we can expect a whole lot more than that. If they are not able to force turnovers and this Packer offense starts slowly, I think eventually they can put points up. But if they're chasing, I'd expect kind of a similar outcome as what we saw in week 1. But optimistically, Packers are able to get off to a solid start, have some effective offense, force some turnovers, and and hang on this one. I've got the Packers 30, the Eagles 24, 2+ turnovers from the Eagles offense, clean game from the offense on the Packers side. Go on the road. Let's go. Let's go. Packers win. Go Pack go 30-24.
Terrific. Terrific. I love it. Folks, if you're watching, feel free to drop your score predictions in the chat. Wayne, I see 38-24 Packers. I love that prediction. That's super fun. Anybody else, will read it off in our live chat here. Throw in your score predictions now, cheeseheads. Wags, I agree completely with you that 30 points is the absolute magic number. Philly D, we've got an Eagles fan in the chat, has the Eagles winning 31-20. I do not agree with you, Philly D. Thanks for joining, but I do not agree with you. Others, feel free to drop your score prediction in the chat. Wags, 30 is the number. It's a huge number. It's an important number this week. It's playoff football on the road. It's going to be like 40 degrees. So weather's just going to be what it's going to be. Packers are going to put up 31 points. The Eagles are going to put up 30 points. The Packers are going to win this ball game. It's going to be an absolute nail biter. And I'll tell you what, I chose Jordan Love as my X factor for a reason. I think the Packers are down and there's a late game drive and McManus hits a field goal to win the game. Or pretty darn close to it. Maybe the defense has to get back out there and take care of business, but I think it's that close. I think that it's going to be sum of all parts this week. The defense is going to have to do their part. The Packers offense is going to have to do their part. Jordan's going to have a big game, offensive line, defensive line, across the board, right? But end of the game, 31-30. Green Bay Packers are winning this game. They're going on the road somewhere else the following week. Sheila's got 24-22 Packers win. I love that prediction, Sheila. Thank you very much for joining as well.
Yeah, well, if the Packers win, going on the road is not somewhere else. They would go to Detroit. So okay. We got that for sure, that we know the path. So it would not get any easier, but it starts this week. You just had to go 1 week at a time. And listen, we know the Eagles are a very good team. I think they played at a much higher level throughout this season than clearly they did last year, where they struggled down the stretch. So I would expect to see a high quality opponent, just like we did in week 1. Looking forward to hopefully being on a normal surface and not an ice rink like we were on down in Brazil, and seeing what we can do against this Eagles team. It's going to be fun either way. Looking forward to it. And hopefully a good, strong performance from this Packer team, and just give ourselves a chance to pull one out down the stretch. So, Dan, anything else? Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to say we only get so many of these playoff games, right? Just period. We've been doing this podcast for a bunch of years. We've been so fortunate that we've been watching a lot of playoff football over the years. And maybe not every year, but pretty darn close to every year that we've been doing this podcast. And I know there's frustrations with how the season ended, but just to your point, Wags, enjoy the moment. We are watching Packer playoff football, which is all we could have asked for in August. I'm so excited to watch this team play ball on Sunday. And the expectations are high because this team has set the expectations high. The bar is high at Lambeau and in Green Bay and in Wisconsin. So let's win a damn football game on Sunday.
All right. I think I couldn't have said it myself. So thanks everyone for joining. As always, be legendary and go Pack go.
Go Pack go.
Every year I know we gonna go hard. We been that team ever since Bart started. All my cheese heads go Pack go. Ain't showing no mercy, cutting no slack, no. I ain't a bad sport and I'll even wish you good luck. Only thing I will